Okay, well, thank you. I'm John Centel, president of Lake Forest Openlands, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight about several things I'm very passionate about. One is conservation, second is Lake Forest, and of course the third is Lake Forest Openlands. So thank you for the invitation. A couple years ago, our city recognized, well, actually, I'd like to start by saying first I'll cover several things tonight in about 15 minutes. First, I'd like to talk a little bit, although many of us are familiar with Lake Forest Openlands Association, I'd like to talk a little bit about our history and our mission, our role in conservation and the community, and of course, finish with our partnership, our very long partnership with the city of Lake Forest. A couple years ago, our city recognized its 150th anniversary, and from at that time, what I realized was from the very beginning, there's been a common thread that has defined our community, a respect for our unique natural landscape that defines Lake Forest. And in terms of our land, what we share and where we live here is really quite special. I can't really think of anywhere else in the country that has this unique mix of habitats that we have, from a freshwater ocean to beachfront to bluff to ravines to upland woodlands to savanna, prairie, and wetlands. It's really quite remarkable. And these areas in and of themselves are really quite special. And in fact, within our borders are 15 tracts of land that are dedicated as part of the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission system, which is the highest level of recognition available in the state. So in a sense, it's our land that gives us this sense of history and this sense of place that is not unlike the College or Market Square or other areas that we're all so familiar with. But the fact that Lake Forest natural character exists is no accident, but reflects a growing spirit of conservation and appreciation for the land, which carries on today. And I'd like to suggest that Lake Forest Openlands Association is really a reflection of our community's conservation spirit. About 46 years ago, our organization was founded to set aside our rapidly disappearing open spaces, and the result today is over 840 acres in our community that are preserved forever. And when I say those numbers, I think it's always important to acknowledge the vision of our founders. Consider that in 1967, the year that Lake Forest Openlands was incorporated, was 5 days before the very first Earth Day. It was before landmark legislation such as the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. And while conservation was happening nationally, the land trust movement had not really even begun. So if it wasn't for this small but tenacious group of people who had the vision to save Lake Forest before it was lost, our community would look very different today. And we have been supported, all the work we've done has been supported primarily through membership and contributions from the community. And this is the commitment that's allowed Lake Forest to remain so beautiful. After 4 decades of work, Lake Forest Openlands mission still remains the same. We're dedicated to 3 core principles: land preservation, restoration, and environmental education. And I want to call your attention to our mission on the screen, that a key portion of this mission is what we call ensuring all generations have a meaningful, lasting connection to nature and our land. And although many of you are familiar with Lake Forest Openlands, I thought I'd highlight a few facts about our organization. Again, 840 acres preserved. We're the first land trust accredited nationally in the state of Illinois, one of only 3 now. We've educated well over 40,000 children, and we are considered a leader nationally in the land trust movement. I talked about 15 parcels that are in the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission. 2 of those parcels are actually Illinois Nature Preserves. And those preserves and other areas in our community have an incredible biodiversity. We have many, many threatened and endangered species within our own community. Again, we're an independent nonprofit, and people are sometimes surprised at the size of Lake Forest Openlands. We have a staff of 15, including 4 full-time restoration ecologists, and in the summer our ranks swell to 25 to 30 when we have interns and we have seasonal educators. I'd also like to just mention that every dollar that's contributed to Lake Forest Openlands, and this is a true grassroots organization, every dollar that's contributed to Lake Forest Openlands goes right back into our community. So today we have 7 nature preserves and over 12 miles of walking trails, not including Openlands Park, which is owned by Lake Forest Openlands. All of these areas within our boundaries, all for us to enjoy, open 365 days a year. And we offer some incredibly special natural places right in our own backyard. Many people know the Dupre Bridge very well. Of course, there's the wetland boardwalk at West Skokie Nature Preserve. And one of my favorite vistas in town is the George Beach Trail over at Middle Fork. If you stay here on an evening and the train's not running by or the Bears aren't piping artificial applause into their stadium, it's probably what Lake Forest really felt like, 150 years ago. It's a really special place. I like to throw this picture up there. This is Laurel Avenue back in 1975. It was a 2-track road. And it's just a fun picture. And 1975 wasn't that long ago, so you can imagine how things would have changed if we hadn't protected our open spaces. And this is an aerial taken in the early 1970s of our Shaw Prairie. And Open Lands really believes that our remaining natural areas are precious. They're not only vital to the hundreds of plants and animals that call them home, but our natural areas make Lake Forest a special place to live, work, and raise a family. And over time, the city has been incredibly supportive and has embraced our conservation efforts. And I call your attention to the city resolution back in 2002, where it says the city of Lake Forest is blessed with an abundance of natural, historic, architectural, and cultural assets, including ravines, prairies, woods, shoreline on Lake Michigan, estates and landscape of great state grounds. And it's the policy of the city to preserve it and through all means, particularly including the donation of perpetual conservation easements, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So how have we as a community saved so much land? Well, there's no one right way, but this formula has been very successful. Of course, Open Lands has purchased a number of parcels outright over the years. We have had parcels donated to us from owners. We just got a 10-acre parcel donated to us back in May. We obtained land through conservation developments. You are all familiar with Middle Fork, with Melody Farms and Everett. Those are conservation developments. Of course, the city of Lake Forest dedicates the property as open space, and the city also holds conservation easements. We have land dedicated as preserves, and of course, we protect lands with conservation easements. And so if you can imagine the dollar value of the property we have preserved. So quickly, what's a conservation easement? Well, really, it's a win-win for nature, preservations, and landowner. It's a legal agreement where you can protect your land, receive some tax discounts, and the land is preserved forever. So Lake Forest Open Lands holds approximately 265 acres of conservation easement land in our community today. That's over 80 conservation easements. And you see them around town. You may not recognize them, but you'll appreciate them and wouldn't even know they're there. Here's one on North Sheridan Road. Here's one on Walden Road. Here's a conservation on North Waukegan Road. Here's a conservation easement on West Laurel Avenue. And here's a conservation easement on Woodland Road. Just a sample of some of the conservation easements around our town. But along with preserving the land, managing the land is a very big job. So as I mentioned, we have 4 full-time restoration ecologists who work very closely with city staff, Peter Gordon, Chuck Myers, to exchange information and constantly work to restore our natural areas. They are experts not only on the land, but on our community's land. Many of them grew up in Lake Forest. Many of them have lived here for a long, long time, and in essence, they're caring for the land they love right in their own backyards. But we could not do it without volunteers. Volunteers are very important. And each summer we benefit, for example, from our land management interns, a group of about 10 college or high school students who assist us in our land management staff. And we have volunteer opportunities for all ages and all interests. And here Jim Cox and Richard Muir are 2 folks who oversee our Bluebird program. And since they've been doing this, we've seen the number of nesting bluebirds in our area increase substantially. Of course, there's other ways we spread our conservation message via the Lake Forest Day Parade. We also have, for the last several years, celebrated a program called the Play Out, where children and their families are pledged to spend time outside together during Earth Day, and they do all kinds of activities such as a natural obstacle course, shelter building, tree climbing, etc. We, of course, have had our native plant sale for about a decade now, which helps promote native plants in our community. In this past fall, we just had a joint native tree sale with the city, which went very well. And of course, September means bagpipes and bonfire. It's an event like no other in Chicago, and it really is one of the great Lake Forest traditions, and it gets people out on the land and appreciate what we do. Education has always been a cornerstone of what we do, and we believe there's something more to nature classes than just the names and parts of a plant, and we embrace the assertion that time in nature is not leisure time, but it's really an essential investment in our children's health. And Openland's environmental education program is based out of our Lockhart Family Nature Center at Melody Farm Nature Preserve. And the Nature Center is our headquarters and is named after local resident and renowned artist Jim Lockhart. Of course, we're pleased also to be a partner at Elwa Farm, where our Center for Conservation Leadership runs. And this past year, we are pleased to restore the historic Armour Wash House into the Barbara Eldridge Classroom for Environmental Education, where we hold myriad education programs right on our Preserve campus. So over the course of each year, nearly 3,200 children have the opportunity to participate in one of our naturalist-led environmental education programs via our full-time staff. And our teaching philosophy is really that learning from the land deepens our understanding and commitment to stewardship. And this is what really makes our education programs unique, is that the land is the children's classroom. We also have echo camps in the summer. Our programs reach outside our borders. For several years, we've had a program with, for example, the students at Oak Terrace School in Highwood. And our nationally recognized program, the Center for Conservation Leadership, is now in its 4th year, and CCL targets middle and high school students from diverse backgrounds, both within and beyond our borders, with the goal of developing the next generation of conservation leaders who care for our environment. And this program combines education and leadership training, community service, and mentor and internships. And one of our great graduates of the program is none other than Will Dixon, who sits on the board right now. So we're very proud of him as well. So this is our philosophy, to have children share experiences that build lasting connections to nature. And this is one of my favorite quotes. Character may be manifested in the great moments, but it's made in the small ones. And that's why we try to give kids a constant connection with nature. Regarding the city, we have had a very long and successful partnership with our city, and I would say our recent coordination and collaboration on many levels of activities has really been exceptional. We have worked together to increase open space protection. We have positively affected zoning and other ordinances in our community. We have had successful conservation developments, as I mentioned, Everett and Middle Fork and Melody Farm, and we collaborate and consult on restoration of our open spaces. Together, I believe we've really enhanced the historic character, the quality of life, and the environment in our city. And recently, we've had some wonderful activities. We're just cooking on all cylinders. First of all, it was really the city and Lake Forest Openlands that led the formation of the Lake Forest Collaborative for Environmental Leadership. And that's been a very successful model. And importantly, we at Lake Forest Openlands just received, on behalf of the city and the collaborative, a grant from the Illinois Coastal Management Program for $161 for our ravine outreach and restoration program, and that's something we're all going to be a part of and all are participating in. We also have been working with the city on the regreening program. We have supported city messaging on the EAB problems. We have been pushing for native trees and regreening in that capacity, and again had a native tree sale. Lake Forest Openlands has been happy to participate in the community forums, such as the Native Plant Forum, the Ravine Forum, the Water Forum, and the EAB Workshop. And we just received, or we're finishing a grant that we received, and where we secured $15,000 for restoration work on the Prairie Bike Path, the 20-acre Prairie Bike Path. We also are working day-to-day on vegetative management on other parcels. Of course, we monitor McCormick for their threatened and endangered species and manage invasive plants there. Just today, we're burning West Campus Woods, which is behind the high school, which is a pretty well-kept secret, but a wonderful native woodland. We've had several successful joint work days at Forest Park and on the beach, and we hope to prepare land descriptions and management proposals, and there's conversation about possibly working together on South Park Woods and Deer Path Road and others. So all wonderful things. Also, we have a 20-year lease between the city and Lake Forest Openlands to partner on managing the natural quality of the land and important conservation holdings. Again, these include McCormick Ravine, North Shore Prairie Bike Path, West Campus Woods, actually the Carroll Meadow properties, which total 204 acres. And so we're happy to do this. This is what we do. This is our mission. This is our passion. And the master lease is really a recognition of the natural value of our city's open space. It not only saves valuable floodplain, but it opens the possibility of greenway corridors. We're about connectivity, connecting our preserves with city parcels, with people's backyards. It protects both rare and much-needed natural habitat. It has really improves the character and quality of life of our residents. And it really, I think, demonstrates joint environmental leadership to the community. So considerations for the future, we believe we should maintain and enhance our close working partnership. It is really a national model of how land trusts and communities work together. There is the challenge of executing native restoration in the face of limited resources. Restoration is costly, and we need to find better ways to do it more efficiently. There is the vision of strategically linking these greenways. Of course, we want to partner on programs which restore our ravines, and we want to explore creative ways to enhance the management of our public open spaces and really consider expanding our role as an efficient and trusted partner and conservation resource for the community. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Thank you so much. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Really nice presentation,
Oh, thanks.
John. Appreciate
Appreciate
that. Questions from the board? I'll just say that I think I can't really speak for everybody here, but I think we all really strongly support the work you're doing, and you've really taken, from my perspective, this open lands thing to a whole new level. I love it. We're seeing you all over the place, and it's really it's making a difference.
Thank you.
So,
Very nice.
yeah.
Very nice.
I'd just like to add a comment too. I think we're in an age where partnerships is more critical than ever. And we recognize really within the Parks and Recreation Department that we can't be all things to all people when it comes to open spaces or, our parks and our natural areas. And it's really been a tremendous advantage for us to have a resource like Lake Forest Open Lands to collaborate with, to work on these kinds of things, because our staff, whether they might be in the park side, may not necessarily have the restoration background enough to help us execute some of these challenges that come our way. And then on the vice versa, when Open Lands has, need for special events, or we can do some things together, we can partner with them on it. And so for me, in the last few years, I've certainly seen our conversations accelerate and our connectivity grow, and I think it's been a really healthy direction for us to go. And I think we sat the other, probably like 3 months ago, and our challenge was we had so many potential projects to do together that we were trying to weigh what were our priorities and what kind of timetable was realistic given the volume of projects on our plate for both of our organizations, and really where to put our energies and stuff. And again, it's just really nice to have that connection with another organization to work those kinds of things through. And I think the residents will benefit from that, obviously, over the long haul. But I think our department just couldn't serve some of these properties as well as they deserve to be as a steward without the professionalism of Lake Forest Open Land. So very much appreciated, John, with your whole team.
Thank
Been
you,
a great
Mary.
resource.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is a report on park grants by Chuck Myers. Chuck?
Great presentation to follow, and I do appreciate the partnership with John. You're going to see Lake Forest Open Lands mentioned quite a few times in this update, so I'll go ahead and get started. I gave you a table in your packet that has the grants listed that I'll be talking about. One correction on the first one, the Lake Forest Ravine Education Outreach, that's the one that John mentioned. I have down on the far right that it was going to be awarded on October of 2014. It was actually already awarded, so that should be 2013. But John mentioned the grant a little bit. I do want to just go through these kind of quickly, but this first one is the only one that we have received. The other ones we're working on or have been submitted, and we're waiting to hear back. So this one was through the IDNR, and it was their Illinois Coastal Management Program. And as John said, it was part of the collaborative. I think we've talked about that before. The collaborative is between the Lake Forest Open Lands, the City of Lake Forest, Lake Forest Schools, and the Lake Forest College. So Lake Forest Open Lands is listed on the grant. They're the lead on this. You couldn't put the collaborative as a lead on that. So the grant is going through them, not the city, but we're all very involved in this one. This one has everything to do with ravines and ravine education. So it has components of educating students from elementary up to college age, but also residents about the right things to do on their ravines if they live next to a ravine. So there's quite a bit of different educational components to this, but also there is some outreach, some help from marketing, how we can better let people know about ravines and get the word out to residents about ravines. But also there's a small component of restoration, and we'll talk about restoration on a couple other grants, but restoration is the ecological restoration. So it's the stabilization where there's erosion, but it's also getting rid of invasive species like buckthorn and things like that, and restoring a ravine to its natural state so that it's functional again. So that's the idea behind this grant. It is focused on Seminary Ravine, which is the city has property at Forest Park on the Seminary Ravine, but also there may be some outreach possibilities at McCormick as well. Previously it was mentioned that it's a $161,000 grant. A big portion of our match on this one is our time. So we're not putting up a lot of money on this one. It is mainly our time. Our forestry staff will be involved with some of the restoration activities. I'll be involved. Some of our office staff will be involved in creating some of the material. This is a map that was used at the recent Community Engagement Forum on ravines. I'm just bringing it up to show you where some of the public ones are. The one I just talked about, this is it's Witch Hazel Seminary Ravine. This is Forest Park. I should tell you, the green is the public-owned ravines. So the grant I just talked about is centered here, and this is McCormick, the bottom or the top green with the hash mark. So this is the McCormick Ravine. This is James Ravine. This is Lake County Forest Preserve. I'll talk about that later. And this is the Cemetery Ravine right here, way in the north. The next one I want to talk about is the Cemetery Ravine. About a year and a half ago, we contracted with Conservation Design Forum to do a study of the ravine up there. Some restoration work has been done on that ravine over the years, but we did this study to update things, and the result was, as we suspected, that the ravine is in very poor condition. So this is a project that the Cemetery Commission is very enthused about. They really feel that we need to do something about the ravine and restore it, stabilize it. So at their direction, we took that study. The study was actually a proposal as well for restoration. So we took that and we applied for a grant. It is a EPA grant, but it is federally funded through the Clean Water Act, Section 19. And as I said, this is all about restoration and stabilization of the ravine. So it would involve removal of some concrete structures that are there, removal of some invasive species, that kind of thing, but a lot of it is replanting the ravines as well. And with any of these projects, there would be some structures put in. They have to restore the flow of water and protect it from gullying or from erosion. So they do, there's stone in some cases, gabion baskets, things like that, that slow the water down and prevent further erosion. So this one, again, was a partnership between the City of Lake Forest and the collaborative that was mentioned earlier. They supported this project as well. It is a $744,000 project. It is a 60-40 match. So that comes out to be, the city would be putting up about $300,000, and the grant would be for $445,000.
And we don't know yet whether that's
We
been
do not
granted.
know. We submitted it. This one was submitted back in July. We expect to hear back sometime by January of 2014. So we're hoping to find that out soon. This is a portion of the ravine. You can see some of the cutting underneath of the bank and that kind of thing. So overall, it's in pretty poor condition, a lot of work to do. This is just the scope of the project. The lake is over here, and it's the cemetery is throughout here, and the ravine runs along the top. The next one, this is the Fort Sheridan Ravine and Coastal Restoration. This is the biggest one I'm going to talk to you about. This is a huge project. It's been going on for over 5 years. It is a huge study was done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under the Section 506 Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration Program. So their focus is the Fort Sheridan ravines in that area. For us, it involves McCormick Ravine. So we've been involved. It's a very slow process, I'll tell you. There is a huge amount of work that goes into this. For the last 2 years, it's been, there's long periods of time where we're waiting to hear for more information. It kind of goes back and forth. And like I said, it's been 5 years now. But in the last few months, it has been it's been building some momentum. So we expect that this one will be happening soon. This is not the kind of grant that has a deadline. It is a program. So when all this is written and everything is figured out, it will be submitted up the levels of the Army Corps. So it's being worked on right now. The biggest thing for McCormick, I have a couple photos, but there are a lot of structures in there that have to be removed. There's old tiles, there's concrete infrastructure. But also there's a need to clear some of the invasive species that have come in there and establish native plants. There would be some of those other features that I mentioned with stone and armoring of the base. But one of the goals here is to restore it so that fish can come back into this. So some of the native fish that used to inhabit the ravines would be allowed to come back in here because all of the structures would be gone. By the way, there are fish that do use our other ravines seasonally. In the spring, you can see fish. So this one would be restored to that level. If you don't know, McCormick is considered to be one of the highest quality ravines in the area. It's considered the gem of this region. The partners on this one, Lake County Forest Preserve is one of the biggest partners on this, but also Open Lands. That is not Lake Forest Open Lands, that's another agency called Open Lands, and the town of Fort Sheridan, and of course the city of Lake Forest on that one. The total project for the whole area, and I'll switch to the next slide on this, this is the whole project area. This is McCormick on the north, but it goes all the way down here, down into Highland Park. It is $15 million. Our portion of it with McCormick is about $3 million. These numbers are still being worked out, though. So we're trying to work out, we can use our land value as part of the match. So we're still trying to figure out what this is going to cost. Nothing has been submitted yet. We're not committed to anything on this one. We're waiting to get the final results. And we expect that's going to happen in the next few months. As I mentioned, here are a couple of the photos, all the debris that's down. This is the portion where the ravines come together. Janes comes in from the Forest Preserve. McCormick comes in. They come together. Their confluence is what I'm showing here. That's where all the debris is. That's where a lot of the work needs to be done. And this old concrete structure all has to be removed. The next grant I want to talk about is, again, Forest Preserve is the author on this one. They came to us and asked if we would partner with them. They have the bigger part of this. This is a new grant. They call it the Chi-Cal grant. It is funded by Chi-Cal River Fund. It's a new grant that we wanted to be a part of, and when the Forest Preserve said, hey, we have an idea for a project, they said they would do the majority of the work. I said, all right, let us know what we can do or how we can partner. So this is a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. Forest Preserve's leading this one. It is in the Middle Fork area on the west side of the city. For us, it would involve Ellowa and Meadowood parks in a small way. Meadowood, if you don't know, is one of our smaller passive parks. It would involve, on a bigger scale with the Forest Preserve, it would involve removal of drain tiles on some of their property, but also restoration of some of the wetlands. For us, we're connected to that whole corridor. This grant, by the way, is all about connecting this corridor. It's about connecting people to it as well. So there's aspects of trail and access to the Chicago River. Middle Fork is part of Middle Fork is a branch of the Chicago River. So the idea would be we're adjacent to that property, so we just jumped in on it. So we would be doing some invasive species removal at Meadowood and some native seeding and some access improvement. The partners, again, Lake County Forest Preserve, the city, Lake Forest Open Lands Association, they are doing similar things up near Ellowa. Lake Forest Open Lands has some properties they own that they would be getting some restoration work done on as well. The whole grant is about $300,000. However, our portion is $10,000. It is a 50-50 match on this, so we would be putting up $5,000 of our labor. Again, our forestry, our parks would be doing some work, parks crews would be doing some work, clearing work for $5,000 worth of labor. That's our in-kind match. And in return, we would get restoration on our lands over there. So that would include either seeding or planting of native species, that kind of thing. And this doesn't show up very well at all. But this is the Middle Fork Savannah. This is Ellowa, very small here, but that would be one of the potential project areas we could do the restoration on. We wouldn't be doing any clearing up there. Meadowood is down here. We would be doing the invasive clearing there. Next grant is called Reconnecting Urban Forest, Oak Woodland Restoration near Lake Michigan. This is, again, same kind of thing. Lake County Forest Preserve asked if we would join with them on a grant. We actually applied for this grant about 2 years ago. The grant it took a while for us to hear back, but it took about a year actually to hear back. It scored the highest of any project in the state of Illinois. However, that's the good news. The bad news is nothing in Illinois was funded. This is federal funding, but so they suggested, the Forest Service suggested that we resubmit it and that we look at partnerships. So we basically went back to it with the Forest Preserve went back to it. They talked to us about rejoining them, crafted it a little bit different, and we just resubmitted it last month. So this is again, it's a federal grant from the Forest Service. It is funneled through the state. Most of these are. So we have to get the state's forester to sign off on it. But this would involve one small area at McCormick and the natural area that is managed actually by Lake Forest Open Lands along the McClory bike path. And I have a map of that I'll show you in a moment. For us, this is tree planting. It's planting of oaks. The idea on this grant, when it says reconnecting urban forest, it's trying to deal with fragmentation of oak savanna. So they're trying to bridge some of the gaps. Lake County used to be loaded with oaks, and they're kind of bridging those gaps. So they would be planting on the old Fort Sheridan golf course. That's the bulk of their project, and they'd be planting mostly oaks. We would be doing 75 trees in the area that I described. So again, the partners on this, Lake County Forest Preserve, the city, and again, Lake Forest Open Lands, and Open Lands as well. The total project cost is $276,000. However, for the city, it again is $10,000. And on this one, we would use $5,000 out of our annual tree replacement that we talked about last month. We would take that $5,000 out of that, leverage it to get 75 trees. So
Chuck,
this is a cash match.
Did I miss something? What's the difference between Lake Forest Open Lands, or LFOLA, and Open Lands? Is that-
Lake Forest Open Lands Association is John Santel here.
well, and many other people.
Lake Forest Open Lands and Open Lands are both land trusts. We're the North Shore Community Land Trust. Open Lands Project, which was once known, is the downtown project, but they do own a parcel called the North Shore Preserve in Highland Park. And so when they're talking about Open Lands being involved, it's because they have the North Shore Preserve in Highland Park.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, often
Makes sense.
confusing. They are one word. I think this is right. They're open lands, one word. Our open lands here that we work with, Lake Forest, is two words.
And we've trademarked ours as well, I assume.
Oh, I'm sure we will. Yeah. Good question, though. It is often.
There's room for
confusing.
more than one open lands, apparently.
Yeah. So, as I said, it's a 50-50 match, so we would be, we'd be paying $5,000, but we would be getting the 75 trees funded. So, again, this isn't the easiest to see, but this is the old Fort Sheridan Golf Course in here. You can see the cemetery up here. This is McCormick. That little blue spot is where we would propose to plant a few trees. This is the corridor along the bike path, a beautiful natural area that you see as you're going out of town there, south by the railroad tracks. So we would be adding some trees in there. And the final grant I want to talk about, this is one that I was involved with a while back, about a year and a half ago. It is now in the hands of our engineering department. So, but I wanted to bring it up because it does relate to Park and Rec. This grant started as a bike structure grant, like a bike shelter, at the east train station on the east side of the building there. And it grew from there. We expanded the scope, and actually I should say that grant was approved. It was a $70,000 grant. It was tied into some of the other improvements that were made at the train station last year. We went back to DOT and the county and said, we have another idea for expanding the scope of this project. So what we did was we proposed that the bike path from Illinois to Woodland goes right through the parking lot train station. That's how it is now. It's not the safest situation because you go from bike path to parking lot for a long stretch, and then you go back onto the bike path. So the idea was to have a separate and distinct trail just for the bike traffic there and get it out of the parking lot. That's what was proposed. DOT liked it. The county liked it. So we pursued what's called a Transportation Alternative Program grant. These are relatively new grants, but they're all about, I mean, they're encouraging bike paths like this and connections with bike plans. So as you recall, a few months ago, the city council, I believe we had a meeting where we talked about the new master bike plan. City council approved that plan this summer. One of the things that was identified in that master plan was the need to fix this area. So that's where I was involved about a year ago with that master plan. That's when we started to develop this because we knew that was the need. So that grew into a grant application. This is a pretty expensive project. It's $955,000 total, but it is an 80-20 match, and they're paying the 80, fortunately. So this would be a great thing to get. It would involve a brand new trail that is 10 foot wide there, and you'll recall the rest of the bike path is 8 foot wide. The suggestion or the recommendation of the master bike plan is 10 foot for the whole thing. So this went ahead and jumped to the 10 feet width. The other reason that it's fairly expensive, there is a lot of landscaping in this.
Chuck, where does the easement come from between Illinois and Woodland
Well,
to get that done?
I'm not sure if you can see it very well on here. I know the scale is difficult, but I was trying to show the whole stretch. So this would be Illinois, and Woodland is up here.
Yeah.
This is all parking lot as I'm traveling up here.
Yeah.
This is parking lot, all parking lot. The easement is along McKinley, all the way up in here. It does wind a little bit, but it's not a very big area. You'll recall there's a lot of crab trees, beautiful crabs and everything up in here. We're trying to save as much of that as we can.
So we're talking about creating a separate bike path that's not in the road and not in the parking lot.
Correct.
Sort of between the road and the
Yep,
parking
there's
lot.
just enough room to do it. It was difficult to squeeze it in, but we did hire T.Y. Lin to do this whole study about a year ago. So they put this together, they did all the engineering, and it works.
Man, if they can do that, they can probably do something east-west too.
Probably. Good point. That's next time. We have enough grants to worry about now, but you're right. They could do miracles, I'm sure.
That wouldn't result in the loss of a lot of parking spaces?
A few. We did do a study on that. I don't recall the number, but I believe, as you know, there's some parallel parking right in here where the structure, the little parking, the bike structures, there's two of them, and they're going right in here. To do that, we had to bump it out into some of those parking spots, so there were 2 or 3 lost there. We recognize that parking is a premium down there. We didn't want to lose many, but we're not taking out a lot to do this. So it does increase the safety going through here, we believe, and it does appear that we are going to be recommended for approval on this. We'll know about this in January for sure. Things look really good on it, though. This one was second to the Fort Sheridan one in the amount of working, the amount of work in going to DOT and all that. There are overhead power lines here. ComEd is going to get in the picture here. We're going to have to look at them burying the lines. So it's a pretty complicated process to get this done. So if this goes through in January, and we think it will, the work probably wouldn't start until somewhere near the end of 2014, and it would go into 2015. So most of these have been submitted. This one we should hear about fairly soon. The cemetery one we should hear about in January. The two with the forest preserve, I suspect, the Shy Cal one, the one over at Middle Fork, we should hear about that one probably in January as well. So January could be a big month, or
Chuck, is this this is obviously, it looks to me like a lot of work. It looks to me like a lot of preparation and collaboration, partnership with other groups and so forth. A lot of work on our part. Is this typical for us, or are we trying to step up our grant application efforts?
Well, I can't speak to typical over the last 10 years or anything, but I would say that it is not very typical for our department. Some of these grants have been shifted. Like I said, the one went over to engineering because they were more involved at the time. But it is a lot of work, you're right, and it's just beginning. Once it starts happening, it's a lot more. And John Santel has been actively helping us with the...
You know what strikes me? I mean, it strikes me that very few communities are in a position to do this kind of work. And so it's good that we're in a position to be able to do it resource-wise, it seems, and
I do think it's a little bit of a change. I mean, when I first got here in 2006, really the types of grants we were going after were more things from Illinois Department of Natural Resources that were like Town Line Park is kind of an open space, grant that we did. What we're seeing is there's a lot more federal dollars coming our way for you know, really green and environmental projects, the conservation components, the clean water, and that kind of thing. So we've seen a great deal of more grant opportunities come. It is very time consuming. I give a lot of credit to Chuck for his amount of time he's devoting to preparing the materials and, you know, all the backdrop materials that go with it. We just met the other day with finance to go through it because we need to make sure that we are tracking which monies, which dollars are being matched for what, and then as bills and coding and all those kinds of things, if these grants come to be, how we'll manage the grant. And then because of the volume of grants that the city is going after, not only in our department, but other departments, it will trigger significant levels of audits that we'll have to do related to our grants. So this is, I mean, it's obviously a wonderful thing to be pursuing, but we are probably reaching our threshold right now, what we can manage in grants. We have a lot of grants sent our way, a lot of ideas. I mean, residents send us grants, the city manager sends us grant opportunities, but I do think we're kind of reaching a threshold. And I know one of the discussion items going into this next fiscal year is to look at whether or not citywide we want to consider having a grant person on retainer to assist us with this. And when I first arrived in 2006, we did have a company that did that. They were on a retainer for us, and they searched for grants because at that time grants were really hard to find. She helped us locate them and then helped us put our applications together and kind of put all the framework around them. But we went away from that in 2008 when the economy collapsed and grants kind of dried up. So we took that back out of our budgets. But I do think it's something that we are going to discuss as a city, just because it's City Hall is working on grants, Public Works is working on grants, and we're working on grants, and they're many times great opportunities, you know, to leverage dollars to our advantage. But they are a lot of work, and you know, we're trying to work through some of those kinds of things. And you know, I want to make sure that Chuck can do other things in his job than just work on grants for all of us. But I wanted you to hear it because there's a lot of great stuff in the works, you know, that are right on the cusp of happening in our community that isn't something we've been addressing. When we did the Ravine engagement forum, a month ago, you know, it was mentioned by a resident, you know, 15, 20 years ago, our ravines were just dumping grounds. And now we recognize the incredible value they are, and now they've raised to our awareness level, and now we need to deal with them. And so we've got new challenges on our plate that we didn't have 15 years ago, but we do want to take care of that and be good stewards. So again, a lot of interesting stuff happening. So
I didn't mention it in the table for obvious reasons, but we have applied for a number of Emerald Ash Borer related grants as well. We haven't been successful in that. They are very competitive. Last year we applied for 2 of them at the same time, and smaller grants, and we thought we would get somewhere on those, but they're more localized grants, and other communities are grabbing those. So, but these are, we feel pretty good about most of these, but a couple of them we have received letters that they're very competitive, where they've received, you know, 30 applications. There's $1 million, you know, there may be $5 million budgeted, and they have received, you know, $400 million worth of requests. So, you know, they're competitive. So. But everyone that I mentioned here tonight, we do feel pretty good about. We just have to wait and see. So,
thank you.
All right, thank
I
you.
guess my only question is some of these grants I'm looking at, it's a $5,000 grant. I hope we're not spending $6,000 in staff time to chase after a $5,000
and those are the
grant.
ones that came those are the nice ones that the
Just
Forest
sign it.
Preserve came to me
Yeah, okay.
and said, hey, we're not looking for a lot. They did all the work. We had to write maybe a paragraph and give them some numbers and agree to it. So 2 of them were piece of
Okay.
cake.
Good.
I was teasing Chuck, though, the other day. I said, I think we need electronic signatures for everybody that's on the collaborative, because I'm trying to track down everyone in the collaborative, sign off on all the grants. Could be a 4-day process. So, you know, it's been kind of a challenging thing, but yeah.
Yeah, we are keeping that in mind. We're not
Okay.
going to put too much staff to get a small return. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Next up today is, well, I guess, Mary, do we want to have any conversation about the capital
Yeah, just a
improvement
couple
projects?
quick comments. We had on our agenda tonight that we were going to have Park Board give approval to the proposed capital projects list for Parks and Recreation. That the conversation started at a committee of the whole meeting in October, where the group all met. After that meeting, city staff met with the city manager to look at the citywide capital needs, and that's where we have that conversation about whether we have to pare down or do some things a little differently. And so in the packet I had sent you, I had noted a couple potential adjustments to those dollars related to that. However, last night was the next step of it, which was a meeting with the city council. We had a finance committee meeting that started at 4 o'clock. That, I should say, not a finance committee meeting, but it was a budget meeting starting at 4 o'clock with city council. And really the challenges are just being magnified, not only this year, but in future years going out. And for that reason, council wants to do a little bit different approach to the capital this year, and directed the city manager last night to step back a little bit from the capital list and take an opportunity to educate city council a little more thoroughly on each of these projects and why they're important and what benefits they bring to the city, whether or not it supports a revenue stream or there's safety issues, or they're essential for matching to a grant, or what those might be, so that council feels that the $3.5 million projects that we're proposing, that they're comfortable with them and they agree with them, and that everybody's kind of on the same page with that. So having said that, we also did, by the way, as part of the October exercise after we met with you, a lot of belt tightening, and that's always the challenge as an executive team with the city to, pare down $5 million worth of needs into a $3 million list. And so the challenge that we have is there are a lot of needs, and how to fund all of them. So rather than have you approve a list tonight, that we'll have more discussion and there may be some additional thoughts or direction on that, I would recommend that the park board not approve a list that's tonight, that's still in a little bit more in transition than normal. And in December, the city manager is going to hold a meeting with the city council with a representative at a minimum from each ward. So all 4 wards would have a council member attend it, but all the council would be invited. It is an open and public meeting, so it will be posted for the community as well, but so that executive staff can walk the council through all of the proposed projects for this year with the rationale and justification behind that. So I think it would behoove us to hold off on our support of a list and hear what comes out of that, and then bring that list back to you if there's any adjustments, and have further conversation, with the park board.
Right,
to that.
and we were talking about the possibility of having someone from this group attend those meetings.
Yes, we did. Steve and I chatted a little bit about that today. It will be an open meeting, but I think it would be helpful to have park board attendance, whether one person or more than one is welcome to attend, but at least one person there that could kind of be the liaison to share how the dialogue has went and kind of back up, I guess, some of those conversations as to the importance of our projects.
Seems to me that this is really pretty darned important stuff vis-a-vis the spending that we've all talked about and prioritized ourselves. Of course, we don't have the perspective that the city council does across the entire budget landscape. But is anyone here willing to step forward and sort of represent this group in those meetings? Anybody want to do that?
Or maybe a suggestion, we each come from different wards, and if they are different ward meetings, maybe we could break it up that way too.
I'm sorry, say that
Are they
again.
going to be different ward meetings, or are they?
No,
going
they'll
to
just be
meeting?
one meeting. It'll be a 3-hour meeting, one evening.
I
don't
thought you
know
said
that-
there might be up to 2 meetings, or
There
it's
might
just
be 2, depending on how long it takes, or depending on what comes out of that meeting, but they're looking at an initial meeting sometime in December, about a 3-hour meeting. I don't have the dates yet, so I could send those dates out when I get a little better sense of that, but we don't have to decide it tonight, but I at least wanted to mention that to you,
Yeah.
that that's an option
well,
for the park board
perhaps
to
everybody
consider.
could consider that, and then we can circle back afterward and see
Sure.
if we can. Yeah, that makes sense.
Is,
Okay.
is there an exact date set already though? I missed that. Or is
I
it
don't think
just-
there is yet,
Yeah,
no.
so I think.
Yeah,
once
they
the
just
date's
sent
set-
out some
Then we can-
possible
we
dates
can-
to council today
Good,
to.
good point, David. Yep.
Yeah.
Good point. All right, then we will move on to the approval of athletic field program use fees, and Anthony Anashevitz. Anthony?
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me. What I want to do tonight is give you a brief history of our athletic field use policy and then propose a 5% increase across the board in terms of our fees. In 2003, our policy was written, and it basically provides structure to any outside organization that wants to use our fields that's not recreation-based. It's also written to provide us a way to compensate for our costs in terms of providing them those fields, game fields for soccer, baseball, etc. As it stands now, we have 4 organizations that really utilize our parks. Lake Forest Baseball Association is one, Lake Forest Soccer Association, and AYSO, and St. Mary's Football. Important to note, too, that Lake Forest Baseball uses up to 9 diamonds at one time. And we kind of crunch the numbers that, our busiest time of the summer, whether that's June, July, could be up to 30 preps a week, 30 game preps a week. Soccer could use up to 4 parks at any given time. And that math kind of rolls out to 50 times a week in terms of routine maintenance for lining fields and such. So in 2007, in preparation for the 2008 year, a policy was also passed to increase each of these fees by 5% each year from there on out. However, we did not, between now and then, we did not charge that 5% because of a sport field improvement fund that we created for these organizations. For those that don't know what this fund is, we simply ask the organizations to pay us a fee per player. We put it aside, we accrue this money, and then we put that money back into the fields, directly into the fields, whether it's a baseball diamond amenity like a dugout, or shielding those dugouts, or helping purchase new goals for soccer fields. We set aside this money to put directly back into the fields that they used. The costs that we accrue as a city and the fees that we charge are for routine maintenance. Those fees simply cover our costs as a city. So as well as the outside organizations for in regards to SFIF, our recreation programs also donate to those funds too, because our recreation programs use those parks and fields as well. So the dollar amount is slightly different from outside organization to in-house programs, but both programs do get charged that money to put that money aside.
So that's like a capital account that's viewed as for capital improvements?
More or less, yeah, just in terms of field maintenance, yes.
It's not, but to clarify, it's not field maintenance. It's things like backstops,
Improvements is a
replacement.
better
it's,
word, right.
It's concrete, pads underneath the baseball diamonds. It's, it's not lining the fields, and it's not turfus and stuff. I mean, it's minor assets replacement, but system-wide for all of these amenities.
And Mary, you said that's about $30,000 a year,
It varies, yeah, about,
Varies depending on enrollment in these
Yeah.
programs, right?
but in that ballpark,
Yes.
$35 per person per program?
$30,000.
Oh, 30,000,
per-
I'm sorry.
For everybody.
Okay, got it.
And Mary's right. They are field amenities. They're not. It's not routine maintenance. It's the additions we make.
So Anthony, will there be a 3 to 5% increase in the house programs too?
In terms of rates per child, well, our fees go up about 3% every year.
I know,
In-house.
but will they see that extra, almost 5%? I said 3 to 5%. Will they see an extra bump as well to compensate for some of these field costs?
Not necessarily, no, because the in-house programs, our fee structures have all that maintenance built into the fee structure.
Okay.
In 2008, as I spoke about that policy that was passed for the 5% increase, we didn't charge the 5% increase because of the SFIF funds that were created, as well as staffing issues. Before that policy was passed, we had 2 full-time staff members on board to do these field maintenance, the preps, the game preps for both soccer and baseball. We changed some things staff-wise, and were able to not accrue those anticipated costs when that policy was passed. So again, we didn't feel the need to go back and charge these outside organizations at 5% on a yearly basis. The reason we're asking the reason we're proposing it now is to kind of get our our hands around these policies. I'll show you a chart in a little bit that shows the numbers fluctuating from year to year, and then our proposed numbers at the very end, starting FY15. There is a jump in the revenue, and I do want to explain that. With the transition in staff in FY12, we didn't have a good sense or a good bridge of communication between athletics and parks. Rich Paulson and I have vowed to fix that. And this year, the proposed action will show that bridge in communication and that bridge and how we're covering costs. So when I show these numbers in a sec, after I after I go through this last part here, I want you guys to really understand that, and I'll elaborate on that more. So that's kind of the history of the policy. Okay, this is the chart I was referring to, and it kind of shows what numbers we charged across the board in FY13 to what we're projecting in FY15, and you'll see a 5% increase across the board. The number I was talking about was that FY13 actual, the soccer and grid field fees collected. Again, that year was the year of transition in staff. We didn't quite have a firm grasp on the billing process, and the soccer organizations did kind of benefit from that. The 52,141 that's projected, and I do want to note that is a projected rate. Billing usually happens in December each year, which obviously we'll be doing next month, and at that time we'll have a firm grasp on what the soccer organizations did in fact use all season. We'll have a firm grasp on what other organizations did have grid field usage, such as St. Mary's football. So that number could change, but again, it's going to be in that ballpark, is my point.
Anthony, why is there such a large discrepancy between revenue from baseball and soccer?
Well, so if you look at the fees for baseball, it's an $86 game prep fee compared to the different number in fees for soccer.
I got to imagine that takes a lot more to prep a
It's a lot more
baseball
time.
field than a soccer
Definitely a lot
field.
more time, yeah. Yeah, I don't, maybe Rich can elaborate later on how long it does take a field prep for soccer. The baseball diamond prep takes about an hour, give or take 10 or 15 minutes. And obviously weather plays a huge role in all of this. If it's been poor weather, it takes a lot more to prep a ball diamond, even to reline a soccer field. There's certain days we simply
But
can't
if
get
I'm
out there.
reading that correctly, then we're taking in less money from the
No, it's
baseball
per
side.
game versus per season, right?
Right, so the soccer's a
What are we
12-week
comparing here?
season.
I'm looking at the revenue generated for FY13
Oh, the bottom,
at the bottom.
numbers?
At the bottom.
Okay, yeah, right.
But that's driven off the number of preps you have to do for each of the sports, right? And the cost per prep.
Correct.
For the most part.
Baseball's a much smaller sport
Right.
than soccer.
Shorter, you mean, or?
Less fields versus baseball diamonds compared to the volume of soccer fields and the
Sure.
man hours
Sounds
that goes
like
into soccer versus what it takes us to do baseball.
Right. It takes a lot longer to line and maintain a soccer field than it
Oh,
does to
okay.
There are,
prep a
there are
baseball
like
field.
13 baseball or softball fields in here and almost 30 soccer fields.
Well, 30 grid fields.
30 grid fields.
30 grid
that's right.
fields.
Okay.
Right. So, as you can see here, this is the chart, and again, those bottom numbers, billing is done in December, so all this will be concrete in about a month. But, another reason
When you say billing is done in December,
for the entire soccer season,
so you're charging in advance for the upcoming season? Or-
essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, LFSA is still using fields. Even in November here, they're using Deer Path under the lights. So
Okay.
we don't like to end our billing session until all the soccer's over with.
Are you billing them in arrears or in advance, though?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are you billing them in arrears or in advance? Or
In
as they're
advance.
using? Okay.
In advance. Yep. Another reason that's the jump that it is field requests change every year. The number of fields that they want changes every year based on their enrollment, and obviously we want to give them whatever we can give them. So, though it's going to go, we want it. The 5% will allow us to cover our costs, but those numbers do change from year to year. Okay, just based on what they need and what we can give them. Any questions?
What's causing the cost to go up so much? Is it the labor, or I can't imagine chalk and paint have increased that much? Is
Well,
it
it's an
labor?
overall labor and material cost. Rich can probably elaborate on those exact costs, but it's everything from buying a bag of turfus to paying somebody overtime to do ball fields after 3 p.m. on a weekday.
How'd you come about the 3 to 5%? I mean, I'm a little troubled that we're not charging enough.
Right. So the 5% was again written in 2007, and I didn't, when that came up, I'd have to dig a little deeper as to who made those decisions. But I think the 5% every year was supposed to recover those costs on a yearly basis.
And I mean, I know it's baked into the rec programming. Don't see that much of a fee, but it seems like it's pretty close to what the non-rec programs are
Yeah.
getting an increase, which I think should be a lot higher for non-rec program. Even though the Lake Forest residents, they're using the fields and they should be paying to use them.
I'm open to discuss the recommended action.
I think the thing to be careful on is that we did put the Sport Field Improvement Fund fee in place to help us with the minor asset replacements. So the organizations never had that until a few years ago. So they are already paying a head tax into us for every player that is participating in their programs. This particular fee was set in place in order just strictly to recoup our cost associated with providing the fields, to them and as a service, I guess, to our community. The 5% was decided back in 2007 or 2008, was because we felt that there could be some fluctuation whether we had seasonal employees helping us do the fields or it had to be full-time, whether it was overtime or not. And the 5% fee gave us that window to make sure that we did cover our costs. We were always in at least that 3%, never usually below that, and the 5% up to 5% made us feel that we could for sure cover our costs for that particular year. So that's been, I think, some of the framework that we took forward when they actually broke it down here and they came up with a per prep fees of what our actual cost is for materials and labor. It's in that far right column up there that Anthony laid out, shows that the fees that we're proposing would bring us right up to what we anticipate our cost to be. Now, Scu, if you wanted to change the philosophy to actually, make some money off that part of it,
Well, I think
that
it's
is a change, the direction.
I think it's
so.
I'm not advocating that we should be making money. I mean, I don't believe that programs that the rec offers, we should be making a profit. It's a service we're providing, but these outside entities that are using our facilities, yeah, we should be not trying to break even, but making some money off that usage. And there's a lot of work that's put into that.
When you have groups like LFPA, they work as partners. I mean, they feed off the correct me if I'm wrong, the house programs, and they help build those programs as well. And they are taxpayers and they are residents of Lake Forest. And I don't think we should be looking to gouge them.
I'm not saying gouge them, but
Well, but making money, how much do you want to make? I mean, I'm not saying that to you, but how much more do we want to make than what the cost already is? Because frankly, a lot of these organizations, it's like squeezing blood from a stone. I mean, they're not making money either. Most of them are volunteer run as well.
Any
So
other
that
thoughts?
would be my point.
Yeah, again, we're already charging soccer grid fields are $20 a participant per year in the capital fund.
Yes,
And
if I
10
am,
for
yeah.
baseball. Well, and then on top of that, the other fees. So the rec programs that's just part of the regular maintenance. They're not paying anything for field maintenance per se. So
no, I understand that.
I agree that I think we ought to stay where we are. I think the other thing is that in effect, these people have been paying essentially the fiscal year 13 cost for the last 5 or 6 years. There haven't been any increases, or have there been increases?
That's correct. There has not been increases.
So they've been stagnant for 4, 5, 6 years. Is that
Exactly,
correct?
exactly. Because of the SFIF fund and the feeling that we didn't want to cause too much burden on top of that extra charge.
Pretty tough 5-year stretch too. Yeah. So we're am I reading this right? So we're the what we charged last year in this first column for a baseball game prep was $86, and we think it's costing us in total $89.75. Is that, do I have that right? Okay. So close, but not quite there.
Correct. Correct.
So, couple questions for you. So baseball, we only charge for game prep, but not for practice unless they want it. Whereas soccer, we charge not only a game fee of 2,000, we also charge a practice fee of 1,898. How does that work?
Well, the practices on a soccer field generally require lining. They generally require a field to be drawn. A practice prep on a baseball diamond doesn't need to be lined, doesn't need to put, the manpower doesn't need to be put into it unless they request it.
So if Lake Forest Soccer Association came to the Parks Department and said, we don't care about lining the fields for practice sessions,
That's correct. They would not. pay that money.
then they wouldn't have to pay the number.
That's correct.
Activity-based, sounds like activity-based pricing.
Again, you're charging for the maintenance of the field. That's what these diagrams are showing.
That's right, yeah,
They're
yeah.
not
They're not
paying
for the
any
use of
excess
it.
for
Yeah,
usage,
'cause
which
what-
I'm saying
right.
they should be paying for usage.
Well, that I guess that's the.
I mean, this should be a moot kind of
Second
point. They should be
question
paying
I
for
get
the
to
maintenance
answer.
for
As it stands
the,
now, if they
to
don't,
pay for usage, but to
Right.
pay to use it is a different.
yeah, I see your point. Yeah, as it stands now, they would not have to pay if they just use open space.
And if these organizations went elsewhere to use a field, they would be paying to use the field.
Is that true?
So yeah, there's really no
Yeah.
usage fee. This is
I mean,
just,
these
this
are-
is what it costs for
But
us to
guys,
line.
these are residents, right? They,
Right.
Not,
these are
not
public.
necessarily.
Well,
That-
Not necessarily.
Not
The organizations
necessarily.
have
If
to
you
be
look
res-
at Lake Forest Soccer Association, there's a fair number of participants to come from Lincolnshire, Highwood, Lake
That are on
Bluff,
our teams?
Lake Bluff. Sure.
So the field
Yeah, 'cause
policy.
they're probably
They're,
paying $800 or $1,000 a
they're
year to
regional
be on that
travel
team.
teams.
So the field policy states that any organization who is allowed to use our parks and facilities has to have proof of a 67% or more resident base. So they have to be resident-based organizations.
But 60 to 70% is not 100%.
Correct.
Okay, so
That's fair, but more than half, quite a bit more than half, are residents of the
Right.
community, and we're going and playing in other people's communities, and they're coming and playing in ours. So there's a fairness there, I suppose.
What do other communities do? I mean, do they have similar,
I don't know, any other community doesn't have a policy in place similar to this.
but are they similar cost-wise?
I'd have to do some research, but I bet they are. Field space, any space is a premium to any athletic organization. With so many organizations out there, everybody looks to use a park or gym. Individuals who are training look to use a gym. So there's policies out there everywhere to prevent splinter programs for people using parks that shouldn't. This, that, and the other. But there's policies in place everywhere for this type of stuff.
But truly, this is a maintenance.
Exactly.
It's not a
covering our
usage
costs.
agreement.
It's covering
It's
our
maintenance that you're spreading back to the organizations that are
Yep.
utilizing it. There's no usage fee that really comes into play here.
Right. There's no revenue coming out of this policy.
would it be easier to administer the program if we did just charge a flat fee? In other
That's what I'm
words,
trying to get at.
if LFBA baseball, you can do the math and you say, okay, the fee is going to be X amount and we're going to do these things. Lake Forest Soccer Association, AYSO versus this whole à la carte, because I would think if somebody wants to dissect the à la carte, the amount of revenue that we generate, it's going to go down.
I mean, you bill, prospectively. They tell you what they want. You schedule it all. They tell you if they want you to make lines for their practices. You give them a number and they pay it. That's the way it
And we
happens?
don't provide those things like bleachers or even Deer Path lights unless it's requested. So the base charges of the
But
field.
it all
usage-
gets scheduled out from,
Correct. They
from,
request, we give, and we charge.
Okay.
I
And
think,
the 5% that we're talking about, as I understand it, we're saying, okay, we're gonna start next year for the first time, applying this 5%, which will at least get us up to cover our costs. not counting getting any additional money for the use of the fields. But in the future, if it's going up, the plan is it's gonna go up 5% per year, irrespective of what our actual costs of providing these services are, so
Well,
that
the
I would
proposed action
assume.
would be between 3% and 5%. So if our costs didn't reflect a full 5% increase, we wouldn't charge.
Okay, I was under the impression that maybe it would just be a straight 5, but you're saying it's just gonna be, for the outside programs, it's going to be 3 to 5, which was what we estimate to be the annual increase in the costs of providing these extra services to these outside.
That's correct.
I guess my question would be why we wouldn't, if we're gonna write it that way, why we wouldn't write it that we would increase fees commensurate with cost increases in the future? Not knowing what they're gonna be.
If it's 10, it's 10. If it's
Right.
2, if it's 0, it's 0.
We can adjust the action. I'm not sure where that would take us.
But it's probably 3 to 5 is a reasonable estimate of what it would be, and they could always adjust it year to year, I suppose. But the policy would be it's gonna increase on average 3 to 5, because that's commensurate what we think the costs are gonna escalate at.
Right.
No, we could word it that we would increase up to a maximum of 5%, and if we would exceed that, we'd bring that back to board for discussion. Just so there would be, way for us to share why that would be, or what would be driving that.
Won't these each
True.
year come back to the city council for approval?
Well, the thought here was that if we could put the parameters around it as an existing policy, then every year we wouldn't have to always bring all the fees in this back to you
Yeah.
every single year.
Okay.
But if you want us to, we can. So
There's
I
a
mean,
there's a fundamental issue that's on the table right now, which is I think everybody here is agreeing that we ought to cover our costs. Okay, so I don't think there's any disagreement. Am I
Agreed.
reading that? Okay.
Absolutely.
But what we're really, I guess, fundamentally trying to figure out here and where we stand on it is whether we ought to be charging some sort of a profit margin above and beyond those costs, right? That's the issue
For
you've
outside
raised.
users,
For-
for
Well,
non-rec department programming.
Well,
and-
yeah.
And maybe for non-residents.
Yeah, I think as a practical matter, figuring out how to charge for non-residents would be really hard, wouldn't it?
Once
I think
once
it would be.
once they're in their league and they qualify as a league to use our parks.
Most of them are residents, but some portion of them aren't, and presumably our residents are going and playing in their leagues too. So there's,
Well, I
some
thi-
reciprocality there.
I
But
mean,
I
I
don't know
think
how
you
we
have to
measure
be-
that.
I think you have to be sensitive to the fact that our residents benefit by allowing some non-residents to be on their teams to provide, whether that fills out some excellence level that they need on their teams to remain competitive and really be a quality team and be inclusive. Not every surrounding community of ours has their own leagues or their volumes of participants, whether that's Knollwood or that's Highwood or whomever, they can't have those players participate with them. I think we also want to be sensitive to the fact that our department has a niche with what we provide in the community, and these organizations fulfill a different recreational need in our community and provide a huge service to so many residents in our community that we could not manage and run all those programs ourselves. So I think, I guess I'm sensitive to the fact that I would like to be inclusive and facilitate participation on our use of our properties. The residents in our town do pay taxes, and these parks are for the benefit of everyone. I'd be a little hesitant to make this a profit center at this point in time. That would just be my recommendation for consideration, but.
And I tend to agree with that, but I would also change this document, and it's because it's not a usage fee document, it's a maintenance fee document that these are all outlined as this is what we do to maintain the fields, our costs, and that's being pushed to those organizations. It's not a usage fee. I mean, my understanding of usage fee is I'm paying to use that field, and that's what this isn't. This is maintenance.
I totally agree, because
That's my point.
I came into this meeting with the assumption that the non-recreation department programs were paying basically a rental fee for using our fields. And I can understand why they might say, well, wait a minute, we're residents, we're already paying for it, but that's not what's going on here, so.
So change it to a maintenance fee policy versus a usage fee. I think that's a good clarification.
I think another thing to address then in that thought, what about the teams and organizations that do approach us that aren't resident based? Would there be a separate policy that would be a field use?
I think 100% we need to adopt some sort of a usage fee that
Above and beyond maintenance.
above and beyond maintenance, and then that maintenance fee comes into play when you're using the field. I mean, because if you have an outside organization that comes in and wants to use a soccer field or for lacrosse or what have you, you still got to maintain that for them. You got to set it up for them, and they're going to have a usage fee and a maintenance fee to
The
set
only
it up.
reservation I have there is that we're doing our best to not promote those organizations from forming. There's already enough.
But they do, and that's the thing I think one of the problems is these are cropping up everywhere, and if they're going to do that, then to
Well,
use the
and I think
fields,
it's-
there's
I think if the word gets out on the street that we're allowing outside organizations to rent in Lake Forest, we are going to get quite a bit of requests for that, and that is an impact to our neighborhood parks
I wouldn't support
and
that.
to, our overall open time when,
Is
we
there
already-
any support on the board for something like that? Okay, so I think we can table that.
But I
We
mean,
do charge
I think if you look
outside
at the
fees.
other side of it, let's just
Woodlands
deal with
Academy
the
uses
five
the fields in the
or the
charter.
4 or 5 organizations that sort of fall under this policy. If LFSA or Lake Forest Baseball decided that they wanted to chalk their own fields and sort of do their maintenance so that they could take the $52,000 off of the table, would we be agreeable to that as a Parks Department? Now I'm using it for free, you're gonna mow the parks anyway. And I wanna bring my own lawnmower and mow the grid lines and chalk it myself. Are we good with that? Because I think that's the point that Stu
No.
is, well, but if you don't have a usage fee, and it's just a maintenance fee, and I wanna do the maintenance, and I'm a Lake Forest resident, why wouldn't that happen?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why I wouldn't. I mean, not the least of which is that we employ a bunch of people here whose job it is to do that.
But I'm only saying, if the policy is intended then to be within the department, let's not call it a maintenance fee then. Because we're just
Well,
calling it a
I'm-
maintenance fee
I'm kind
after
of-
we
I'm-
give
I'm
them the usage.
recommending it's a maintenance fee, but it's not an option
Right.
for an organization. This is you're using
Yeah, you want to
city.
use this.
But I
you're
heard
gonna pay
this is a
facilities that are-
but we said this is a cafeteria plan. Pick what you want.
Call it a cost reimbursement fee,
I'm not trying to be
yeah.
argumentative, I'm just saying that if somebody wants to be a resident and bifurcate what we've said here, you can get it down to
But I'm not
a.
necessarily
Bringing their own
seeing
equipment
cafeteria
and doing the
here.
work on our fields has insurance and liability implications and
Absolutely.
frankly, some other things that probably we haven't even thought of. So it's pretty nice of us to give them the chance to, as you say, sort of pick and choose and cherry pick what they would like. But given that they do it ahead of time and they pay for it ahead of time, and then we can schedule around that, right?
Yeah.
That makes it work. So that I can see, and we're using our own assets to make it happen. But I don't think they
Yeah, I
have
would-
an option of doing it
I
themselves.
would like to add too, because I do sit on the LFBA board, there is a sense of supporting each other, and I don't think there's a problem with them paying for these services because they want to support, we want to support each other.
It's pretty easy for them to feel good about it because we're pricing it at our cost.
Right.
That's another point. I mean, is that fair to everybody?
But to the extent that the bulk of these people, with the AYSO and Lake Forest Baseball are essentially all residents, right? The only place where there'd be non-residents is in Lake Forest Soccer?
AYSO, I'm not sure about.
That's Lake
No, that's
Bluff and
Lake
Lake
Bluff.
Forest.
Are there?
Yeah, Lake Forest baseball is maybe a couple Lake Bluffers in there, but it's 99% Lake Forest.
But then if you take Scouts baseball, which is the 13 and 14-year-old program, which we didn't mention in here, that uses the fields, that's half Lake Forest, half Lake Bluff.
Well,
It's a
that's
combined program.
technically a recreation program because all registration comes through us.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Okay, so-
those rates are built with that maintenance fee in it. And that's Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and the philosophy is there that all the kids are going to the high school.
Yeah. Got it.
One last question, just because I don't remember exactly what it's for, but the $20 that AYSO kids and LFBA kids have to, or parents have to pay to be part of it. What is that fee called?
That's the Sport Field Improvement Fund. That's where
Sport
that
field.
money goes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. I
Sure.
forgot momentarily.
That's okay.
And those figures on the, again, I'm sorry to hammer on it, but it just seems really low, those maintenance numbers on the baseball diamonds.
You know, the fees can, you know, we can elaborate more on the fees from the parks end of it.
I mean,
That's-
$86 in 2013 to, I don't know what tier one, but tier one to prep a
One's your
field.
basic prep, no batters boxes. It's a basic prep. You know, the fees can be broken down on the park side. The park side has all those fees broken down.
Okay.
Any further questions, comments?
No, is there a, oh, you're still going. Go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
my last slide was simply the recommended action, which we've touched on a little bit here. So if we need to amend this, I guess we table this and talk about it again.
I'm not sure that's necessary. Is there a quick amendment we can make on the fly? Someone want to propose that? Relative to the percentage increase that we're going to be comfortable with going forward?
Does there need to be a amendment to the, just saying it, change it to maintenance from usage, or is that?
I think that's
is
part
that
of
a-
what we want to change, yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
So we,
Is that
so
part of a movement to say that, or?
I think we need to make a motion. Yeah, I'd like
Motion.
to, I think we need to make a motion. Does someone want to take a crack at that? I'm happy to do it if.
Go for it.
So it sounds like the recommended action is for this body to approve increases for 2015 and beyond up to 5%, driven by cost increases at cost increase percentage, and we're okay with that going forward. We would be okay with that. Anything beyond 5%, and we would want you to come back before this board. We would want these fees to be renamed maintenance fees. Is there anything else?
What do we call them? Field prep fees, isn't that what they really are?
Cost reimbursement fees.
Field
something
prep
like that.
fees actually makes it even more clear, right? Because maintenance is mowing lawns and, yeah. That's a good upgrade.
Field prep.
Field prep fees. Yeah.
Is there a minimum to be set per each year, or
I mean, if,
that's kind of left open?
I would
I'll
say
let him
that the
finish the
minimum,
motion, but-
I would argue that the minimum, or I'd suggest that the minimum is 0.
Okay.
If there are no cost increases, then the fees shouldn't go up. All right, and so that's a long motion, but I think everybody understands what I'm saying. Did you want to add to that, Dan?
yeah, I would just probably, you know, I would, well, I'll let the motion in a second come out and then we'll deliberate it, but
Okay, so is there, so that's my motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
so I guess my concern would be if our in-house programs are going up 3% a year, and given the fact that we are, at least historically, over the last few years, haven't even been recovering the costs for these outside programs, I'm fine with saying a 3 to 5% increase as originally proposed by staff, and if it's above 5%, that they would come back here. Because I think the in-house programs are gonna be going up 3% a year, and to say that the outside programs could go up 0% a year is an inappropriate disconnect.
Any other thoughts on that? I mean, as a principal, I guess I feel like covering the cost of field prep, it makes sense to me. It seems, to be the kind of example we want to set as a community, and I think pricing to recover cost increases also makes sense. The degree to which there is a disconnect is going to be driven by circumstances that push one beyond another. But if we're always pricing to recover cost, that feels okay to me. So, you know, if other fees go up for some other reasons, maybe for cost reasons that aren't related to the field prep costs, you know, I don't know. I understand the disconnect, I do. But I wonder if it's not just more pure, if we just say, look, we want to price to recover cost. And in fact, I would be in favor of pricing to recover costs right now. I mean, I see a little disconnect at the top here. There may be some other disconnects. I haven't done all the math on these rows, but I wouldn't mind if we basically equalize those. Presuming that you feel great about your costing, which it sounds like you do.
Well, yeah, the numbers do show a standard 5% increase across the board. Are you saying there may not be covering the whole cost?
Well, again, I may not be reading this properly, but first row, you know, we're pricing it at $86 for field prep, and it looks on a baseball diamond, and it looks like it's almost 90.
Yep, that's
So we're-
for FY15. That's our projected cost next year.
Right. So we're losing $4.
You're gonna be behind it, because in fiscal year.
Yeah, right.
In fiscal year 15, you're gonna be up another 5% or another $4.50.
I'm talking 1 year back. I'm sorry, I'm misunderstanding. It's
Is
that 89.75 is not our current cost.
It's your estimated fiscal year 15 cost.
And that's why we want to bump
Okay.
everything up by 5%.
Oh, okay.
So the actual cost this year was $86.
I think just under. I mean, Rich has the math.
Yeah. So right.
And these costs are for everyone.
So the top
This
two-
cost is for if it's a house league baseball program, these are the costs to prep the field.
That's correct theoretically, but our cost is baked into our program fee.
Understand that, but it's the same cost. So
Exactly. Same amount of work, same
So,
materials.
external from the rec is paying the same as internal rec programming.
Yep, we're just recovering our costs here.
So I guess back to the motion, I would suggest we stick with staff's recommendation. If it's between 3% and 5%, then they can do it. They don't need to come back to us. If it's less than 3% or higher than 5%, they have to come back to us and to city council.
I think we have to vote on it since there's a second.
All right. Is there a second to the modification of the motion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Wait, I'm sorry, point of information, just real quick. So the difference is, the first time around, there's no set increase percentage, correct? The original motion that you
The
made.
original motion was, right, that we would price specifically to recover costs up to 5%. They would, and they can go on perpetually. If it's always between, 0 and 5 increase, then they don't have to come back and talk to us. And the way that the modification came in, if it's below 3,
Or above
they
five.
got to come back.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
First would be on the amendment.
Could we just,
Procedurally,
So let me go back and do this again. So we have a motion right now to approve, to allow staff to increase prices if cost increases are between 3 and 5 at cost increase for something that we are calling now field prep fees. And that's the motion.
that's the amendment to your motion.
Okay, well, I think in sum and substance, that's the motion as well.
Well, in some substance, unless you withdraw your motion, it's not. There's a motion and a second on your motion. There's an amendment, which the amendment would be, instead of 0 to 5, it'd be 3 to 5.
Okay,
And that amendment has a second, and now we either have to vote on that amendment and then vote on the underlying motion, or withdraw your motion.
We have to vote.
I withdraw my motion,
Okay.
Mr. Roberts. I
Well-
suggest
Bear is over there looking at me, so that's the only reason
vote
so
on
let me or you restate the motion.
no,
then.
you keep going.
All right.
You have the floor.
There is no pending motion then. So the motion would be to, let me get back to your language. Put the next slide up, please, Anthony.
Isn't your amendment to restate exactly what
Yeah.
staff has already recommended?
Basically, it's to recommend for fiscal year, 15.
Just to make it
approval of
easy for you?
Of an increase to the athletic fee, not, the athletic field
Prep fees.
prep fees, not user fees, they're gonna be called prep fees.
Right.
By 5% for fiscal year 15, and thereafter establishing an annual range of 3 to 5% increase without the need for the parks, the rec department to come back to the committee or to city council.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passes.
Trish, you got that?
Takes us a long time to come back to the reality that you all had it right.
We appreciate.
Thank you very much.
I think that was a good discussion, actually.
No, I do
So-
too. I only, before we move on, I know we voted on everything, but in the policy, Anthony, I mean, the only thing that still is under my skin is that these fees should be mandated fees for maintenance. In other words, we took usage out, we're calling them maintenance, and I like the notion that they're mandated for those programs that are Lake Forest based, but that we've sort of accepted in, because it sort of then takes out any of the confusion as to whether it's a cafeteria plan or not.
It
And so I would
it
just
also
like-
recognizes that we employ these people full-time, and they have to have something to do while they're working.
Yeah, exactly. So I just like the notion that they're mandated for these. That sort of gets at we've given them the space.
It
and,
might-
and so on and so forth. So that's
The parts
take it
that
for
are
another day.
mandated to that terminology are the tier 1 and 2 game preps. Basically, tier 1 is your mandate for baseball. Everything after that is added request. The mandated soccer usage or grid field usage, more appropriate to say,
Yeah.
would be your top line there.
So it's the stuff above the.
The a la carte, the practice field without goals or game fields without goals or with goals. Those are the mandated fees. Organizations have to pay those rates before they can ask for anything else.
Okay. That part's just not clear to me in the way that the policy's written, but I'll leave that for you guys to enforce daily.
Anthony, I'd like to suggest, why don't we take these and make the changes to take the feedback in, and we'll send them out to all of you before they're distributed to the organizations, and just see if we've clarified
Yeah,
what your thoughts are on it. So that way, it's the policy itself, just we'll tweak the language in it, not to change the direction that the board has directed us, but just to clean up some of these kinds of language things, and we can share that with you.
And
Thank you.
the other thing I would recommend is, because, my kids play AYSO soccer, and I've been hearing for years how, well, we have to pay this city fee, and there's grumbling out, hey, we're city residents, we're using the fields, and I don't think I'm alone in the misperception that these fees that are being paid are sort of for like rental use of the field, as opposed to cost reimbursement for the specific costs in preparing the field. And so, my recommendation is that somehow we figure out a better PR way to get that message across, so that we don't have other disgruntled parents thinking that the city and the rec department are kind of,
I got to say, changing the name is a big step in that direction.
but and I'd be happy to participate in an explanation of whenever these things go out, so that the people who are getting these understand that you're not paying for the basic rental of the field. You're paying for the costs
Not paying for
specifically
any rental of the
associated
field.
with preparing this field for your specific use.
You might even on your invoice say field prep fee and whatever that is, field use fee 0.
Or just an introductory paragraph or two that explains that, because I do think that there's misconceptions out there about
I can
that.
even ask the organizations to post a letter written by myself or our staff that describe that it's not a rental, it's a cost reimbursement. I'm sure they'll
Yeah,
let
I mean,
me
I
do
think
that.
I mean, Anthony attends the association meetings. They all,
They
I think
get
the
it?
boards all get it, but whether
Okay.
it translates
Boards
down
get it.
to the
My contacts,
participants,
yeah.
probably not. So I
Okay.
think that's a
Well,
really
then-
good point, Dan.
Anyway,
You know.
fees are not that expensive.
I think-
They're only $150
I think it's a nice to have if we can get it done, but I wouldn't spend a lot of extra time educating people on this one.
Okay.
That's $2,000 a year.
Okay,
Doing it.
it's not last, next to last, the penultimate item on our agenda, our august agenda, West Park Ice Rink Background Information Report by Rich Paulson.
Before Rich starts, I just want to introduce Rich. Rich came on board, he's been with our parks crew for a number of years. How many years, Rich?
Working on 17.
17 years. And when we did some reorganization based on the early retirement incentives not too long ago, we did split forestry and parks into two sections just because we did have a learning curve there and found that there was a lot of new challenging needs on our horizon, especially like EAB and things. And so this would allow us to make sure we had the focused attention in both areas. So Rich was brought on as our new park supervisor. So tonight's his first night to present to all of you as our park supervisor.
Good evening, board members, and thank you for having me. Tonight, we'll be talking about the Lake Forest West Park ice ponds.
Can't wait.
A little history. The West Park Ice Pond was established in 1923. At that time, there was underground drainage that was added to a cost of $3,300. The whole field was completely divided up into different sections. There's drainage down the center and spurs off to the whole thing. The first hockey rink was built in 1935, and that was to the tune of $1,000 to complete the hockey rink. The construction of the field starts mid-November with the hockey rink. The size of the ice pond is 330 feet by 220 feet with lights. It's a little bit larger than a football field and also equivalent to 3 full-size sheets of ice at the professional level. It takes approximately 500,000 gallons of water to fill the ice pond, and our system is very unique. We use the underground drainage to assist in holding the water and filling the pond. We have the ability to shut off the drainage and backfill through it with a 4-inch water line where we can get the pond filled in approximately 2 to 3 days once the temperatures allow us and we start seeing where it's going to be freezing. The hockey rink itself takes 3 employees approximately 1 week to construct. As you can see, it's going on this week. They should be finished up tomorrow. As far as making the ice, like I stated, we shut the drainage off to the pond, let Mother Nature help us out for usually about a week before Thanksgiving. We start looking at the 1st of December to start filling the pond from the bottom up. We want to try and minimize the water on the grass to only 90 days. When we have the water on the grass longer than 90 days, we've realized that we're starting to kill the grass, and that field gets used quite a bit. Lake Forest Day, St. Mary's plays footballs there, so we want to try and minimize any damage that we do to the grass. Everyone knows that water freezes at 32 degrees, but it does not freeze at 32 degrees and sunny. So one of our big challenges, we need several nights below 20 degrees to establish, a solid ice base where we can start working with it. Once we do get 4 inches of ice, we start adding more layers daily. On top of it, we have standpipes on each end of the field with 1-inch hoses where we can go out there and start adding more layers of ice. Opening the rink. Once the rink reaches 4 inches thick, we can get it open. We drill probably 6 spots with a 1/2-inch drill, take our measurements to see where we're at, and that's how we determine if the ice is ready to be opened. Once it is opened and it's thick enough to be used, we clean it off daily. Every morning you'll see us out there. We shovel it, clear the boards, get all the shavings off from the night before from the skaters, and then we give it a resurface when feasible if the temperatures. We need them to be at least probably 26 degrees, even with sunny. Otherwise, you'll start seeing kind of the pooling up, and it won't freeze. And if we don't get it good ice, it makes shell ice, and it just freezes only the very top layer, and the kids will come out there, especially during the Christmas break. If they're off school, they'll come right out there at noon, and the ice has not hardened up. and it creates quite a bit of problems for us when we're trying to establish good ice. Attendance, the last couple of years, you can just see the fluctuation. Last year we had great ice. We had numerous days. We had almost 3,000 skaters with the skate guards counting. The year before, we only had 6 days of ice, skatable ice, and 200 skaters. So, and that was all temperature driven. So it is a lot of work for sometimes, the small amount of skaters that get to use it, but when we get the temperatures right, we can make some great ice and a lot of residents.
Rich, how long have we been counting the number of skaters?
This I got from the rec from Jeff, and that's all he had went back was the last 2 years. We dug through everything we could find, and that's all we had.
I do have,
You have some more?
I do have some more. I'm sorry, I didn't know
Perfect.
that. I don't
Perfect.
have it to share with you tonight, but we did count them for the couple years when we were making the decision on closing Everett Ice Rink compared to West at that time. And you might recall we had under 6 skaters at Everett Park for the last 2 years that we had attendance out there. So that's why we did away with that rink and the costs associated with all the pocket parks and moved everybody just to West Park. But but the numbers do fluctuate again greatly. So, yeah.
So that's the attendance that we have. We have numerous challenges while we're trying to make ice. One of our biggest ones is keeping people off until the ice is ready. We have a lot of kids that they see the ice, they think it's ready, and they'll run out there, and 9 times out of 10, instead of just busting 2 feet in and coming right back, they'll try to run across and break the ice in numerous spots. Also, one of the challenges with keeping the people off, we are all, the Parks and Forestry Complete Department are all incorporated in with the snow removal for the city. We're plowing parking lots, we're shoveling sidewalks, we're plowing streets. So the ice pond is kind of the second part of the day, and we might not get there until 2 in the afternoon, but the kids are there at 10 o'clock in the morning if it is a weekend or if it is Christmas break, and they start shoveling it, start moving snow around. We have over the last couple of years really gotten a lot of help from the skate guards and kind of put a stop to that if the kids bring the shovels out there, because unfortunately the kids will clear off a 20 by 20 area just so they can skate, but the snow insulates and then it melts the ice where they put their piles. So when we get there, we have slush under where they've put their piles, and then we have to start over with kind of trying to massage that and getting that back. The snow clearing can take up to 15 employees a full day. That's if we cannot get any equipment on it. If we need 8 inches, which is the next comment, of snow to start putting our trucks, our tractors, and everything else. If we can get the equipment on it, it's not bad at all. It's plowing a parking lot. It works really well. Otherwise, it's all hand shovels and push blowers to get it cleared off. Like I said about the turf, Lake Forest Day and the football take a toll on the turf, so we try to keep that down to 90 days of water to help get that turf back up and ready as soon as we're done. Any questions?
All right. Any questions? No?
It was great ice last year.
Yes, thank you. We're hoping for this year to be the same.
Had no idea there was that much work that went into that.
Yeah,
Thank
there's
you for
quite a
that.
bit.
Thank you for that background.
I think one of the critical things is we can't emphasize enough is our phones will start ringing off the hook with people really upset with us after a snow event, and the kids are off school and they want to come to West Park and skate, and our crews cannot be allocated there because we have to assist with the rest of the snow program, and it is one of the constant rubs that we have of the importance of, they'd like to see us get that rink open as soon as possible, but yet we can't. So we do hope that we wanted to help educate the community a little bit about the dual hat that we wear, and that our goal too is to get everybody on the ice as soon as we can. So as soon as we can pull the guys off of the regular snow program for the rest of the city streets and things and make sure those main corridors are open, then we'll focus on the ice rink. But I
Sounds
think
like you
that's
have
always a
your
big challenge.
priorities well in order. So, the director's report is next.
Yes. Okay, just wanted to start off, first of all, just to give you an update on where we stand with the rec software consultant project. You recall that we are working on a needs assessment of our existing recreation software where we register for all of our programs and our facility rentals, et cetera, household information. And we had an RFP that we sent out. The team that was assembled by the city made up of staff from the IT department as well as the recreation department. We interviewed the RFP respondents that we had, the top 2, and have narrowed it down to one company that we think would be the best company to work with for our consulting on our needs assessment. We are currently finishing up that recommendation, and that will go to City Council on December 2nd for their approval, since it is a capital item in this year's current fiscal year. So making a lot of great progress with that. So we'll be working with whatever company is finally approved during the winter months to really do an assessment of what our current software needs are and the benefits we can gain from that, so that we can investigate a new company to provide our software for the recreation department. So that's been moving forward. Just wanted to give you guys background on that. The second thing I wanted to shout out and celebrate here, and you might have seen it on Gazebo News and others already, but I wanted to mention that this past weekend during extreme weather conditions, think about the crazy weather that came through with the football game and down south, was that our high school sailing team was in the Midwest Championships, the Great Lakes, I should Great Lakes High School Sailing Championships that were held at Monroe Street Harbor in Chicago, and we did end up winning that competition this weekend. So we are very proud of our high school team, and really, again, there was a very challenging environment for them to do that, and with that win, they also will be rated as #1 team in the Midwest. So very excited about that.
Yeah, that's terrific.
And we're going to bring the team to the December 2nd City Council meeting to be recognized for their achievements with their sport this year. So really great group of kids and really wonderful accomplishment. So wanted to share that. The next thing I want to just mention is we got several things coming up on our horizon from a holiday perspective, not least, which is we're hosting the Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital Holiday Boutique at the Rec Center. The load-in started today, and it'll be a wonderful boutique that will be there Thursday through Saturday, so we encourage everybody to come out and support their fundraiser. We have the Sterling Hall Art Sale, which is where our class participants that participate in the arts at Sterling put some of their wares up for sale, which are some great ceramic pieces, mosaic arts, painting, etc. And the proceeds of that go back into, a percentage of that comes back right to the rec department's art program. So it's a nice fundraiser and a great way to showcase not only our teachers but our students that participate in art classes. And then in December, we also have the Strava Dance program. That was the holiday dance program for the department. And also we kicked off with Kinderhaven, which is our preschool, their fall drop-in for prospective new parents. Open house was this past weekend, and those will continue as needed in the next several months as well. So we are well underway with those items, and we're encouraging all of you to think ahead for your holiday gifts, and we have some great pro shop sales going on at the golf course with clubs, merchandise. You can also buy your membership for next year as a family member's gift, so we encourage you to think about that as one of your options as well. And let's see if there's anything else I missed here. I just would mention that if you're a fitness center member, our holiday hours are a little different over Thanksgiving. So to please check our website and see what the holiday hours for coming and working out after your big Thanksgiving meal. So again, lots of things on the horizon for activities and events.
Terrific, thanks. Any comments from any of you?
Just have a question, Mary. I saw an email from you later today about Penny Robbins and her thing. Might you want to share that? And I don't even know, where can I bring things to the...
Sure. As you all are aware, there was some really challenging and tragic tornadoes down in central Illinois and actually throughout different parts of Illinois. Penny Robbins, who's our director of our Kinderhaven program, who also leads our unique component of our Kinderhaven program, which is called Acts of Compassion and Kindness, made us aware that her family, she has a number of family members from Washington, Illinois, that were impacted by the tornado. So she had been reaching out to the coordinator down there as far as what their needs might be. And I was also made aware through the association that they have a park district there that is trying to fill the gap right now for families with extended child care and programs for the families that, need their children to be taken care of while they deal with their family crisis. So talking about it with our staff today and with Penny, we wanted to do something to show, an act of compassion and kindness for what they're struggling with. So we have two different initiatives right now that we're encouraging city staff and anybody in the community that'd like to participate. One is if you have gently used sports or recreational equipment, to bring them to us at the rec center, and we'll take a care gift package down to the community so that they can have the right equipment and supplies that they need to run their recreational programs for their families, and to hopefully give some of those things to the kids who may have lost all of their
When are you going to send
recreational
that
things.
stuff? When are you
What's
going to,
that?
when are you going to send that stuff down?
Well,
What's the
we're
deadline?
kind of in our tight window just because Penny's going to deliver them next week. So we were looking for them to come in by Monday, this coming Monday, the 25th. The other thing that the care coordinator down there said is that they're pretty well set on things like the coats and the boots and things. They don't need that, but what they really need is gift cards to hardware stores, Lowe's, Menards, or Home Depot, that families then can use that to go buy, basics for whether it's cleanup and disinfectants, or whether it's actually hardware needs that they have to help them with their home recovery. So we're encouraging anybody who would like to bring in, either make a cash donation at the rec center so we can go buy those gift cards for families, or if you want to pick up a gift card and bring them to us, we'll also make sure the gift cards get delivered again down to the families down there. So just trying to reach out if we can. And the Kinderhaven program itself, the kids are also involved in this as a part of their Acts of Kindness and Compassion project, in addition to the other ones they do, because we just really felt for these families. And I was really struck by it from the perspective of, I walked out the door after that front moved through, and it was so bitterly cold in the last day or two. And I was thinking about Joplin, Missouri, when they had their tornadoes, and it was June, and they were able to get back into their neighborhood, and they had daylight hours till 9:30 at night to, try to do what they can after they came back from their jobs or whatever. And these communities in Illinois are really going to be struggling because it's dark and it's cold, and it's really snow is coming. It's going to be a difficult, I think, road for these families, and the holidays are right on their doorstep. So we just, as a team at the rec department, gathered today and said, we wanted to do something. So that was kind of a small way that we thought we might help. So encourage the board and anybody who's listening that would like to participate with us. We would love to have your support. So.
Great cause. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks very much.
Send an email to all the residents today. Did you see